You know, Jesus, like it says, said some of the strangest things. We all know that they're many times challenging, but some of the things Jesus said, the stories, the parables, the comments that he made, it's hard to understand where he was coming from sometimes. So in this series, I want to kind of take a look at some of those. Some of them are good news. Some of those are going to be pretty challenging too. And I say that because this walk of faith never ends. Don't ever get the idea that you've arrived. You know, we're always growing and becoming somebody new in our faith as we continue to unfold it and to understand more and more and more about what the Scriptures and the Gospel and the Spirit tells us. So we're going to start off today with one that is it's kind of a familiar story, and I'll read it to you. It'll be up on the screen also, but we're going to kind of unpack this story and kind of look at it. Jesus again, in reply, spoke to the chief priest and the elders of the people in parables. Now I want to stop there for a second. It always seems like Jesus is talking to the leadership of the church. You ever notice that in Scripture? A lot of times he's in conflict with the leadership of the church. I don't think a lot has changed in 2,000 years. Because just because we're in leadership or whatever, doesn't always mean that we are right on target. Okay? But Jesus spoke to them in parables, saying, here's the deal. The kingdom of heaven may be compared to a king who gave a wedding banquet for his son. One of the most honorable events in those days was for a member of royalty to hold a banquet, a wedding feast banquet for his son. This was something that people, again, would have been extremely honored to be invited to. They would have gone way out of their way to make sure that they were totally prepared for when they got to go to the event. It was just one of those things that was very, very important in those days. He, meaning the king, sent his slaves to call those who had been invited to the wedding banquet, but they would not come. Really. Think about it. The event of events, and you have been invited. And sometimes our attitude toward things keeps us away from the many blessings that God wants us to enjoy, from the many events and things that God wants us to participate in. Sometimes the problem is stemming from our own heart, our own attitude toward things. So here are these people, and they would not come to the wedding banquet. Again, he sent other slaves. He didn't stop. He didn't give up. God didn't say, well, it sucks to be you. No. He says, okay. So he sent more slaves, saying, tell those people that have been invited, look, I've prepared my dinner. The food is ready. The oxen, my fatted calves have been slaughtered. Everything is ready. Come to the banquet. Now, you got to understand in the context of that day, for a king to send his slaves for a second time was humbling himself way down the line here. Kings did not do that. If you were a king and you sent your people out to tell those that were invited to come, you came. But these arrogant people didn't. So the king, rather than really losing it, the king decides that in all humility, because he understands what's at stake here, he sends out more people to say, please come to the banquet. But they, meaning the people invited, made light of it and went off. One to his farm, another to his business, while the rest seized his slaves, mistreated them, and killed them. Now, wait a minute. These are people that have been invited to the wedding feast, the event of events. This particular part of the parable, Jesus is really digging at the scribes and the Pharisees and the religious leaders, because this part is a reference to, and I'll try not to trip, is a reference to the prophets of old. God sent prophets to the nation of Israel and said, here's what's coming down the line. And what happened? What did Israel and the religious leaders do? Again, they ignored them, they mistreated them, and some of them they actually killed. So this was a way that Jesus was waking these guys up and saying, you know, you guys have done this kind of stuff for centuries. You guys have refused God's invitation to come to him, to come to this banquet for centuries, and God has not forgotten. He's not forgotten the fact that you've mistreated his servants, you've killed them and so forth. No way. The story continues. The king was enraged. Now from that I kind of determined, you know, God, there comes a point where God says enough's enough. Deal's over. Had your chance. And he sent his troops this time. Not as slaves, not to come and invite you for a third time. This time he sent the militia. And he said he destroyed those murderers and burned their city. And then he said to his slaves, the wedding is ready, but those invited were not worthy. You see, they weren't worthy because they didn't accept what God had put before them. And when you think about it in these contexts, a king of kings, you know, putting before all of these people this wonderful event that nobody in their right mind would turn down, and yet arrogantly they did. Go therefore into the main streets and invite everyone you find to the wedding banquet. Those slaves went out into the streets and they gathered all whom they found, both good and bad. So the wedding hall was filled with guests. This is a metaphor where Jesus is letting the religious leaders of that day know and understand that everybody is invited to God's feast. Everybody. You see, the religious leaders had been promoting the fact that you had to act a certain way, you had to look a certain way, you had to be a certain something in order to be included. That's not the case at all. That is so far from the overall message of Christianity, it's unreal. It doesn't make any difference who you are or what you've done. It doesn't make any difference how good or how bad you are. The invitation to come is open to all. It's that simple. And yet we screw that up left and right. We turn it into something it's not meant to be. We chase people away in droves. In droves, we chase people away from the church. Why am I saying that? Well, one reason is, does anybody know what year the United Methodist Church was formed? 1968. United Methodist Church was formed. And you know what? In the last 50 years, the attendance and the membership of the United Methodist Church has declined in the United States. Year after year after year after year on a steady downhill slope. There has not been one single year where the numbers went up. We drive people away in droves. This morning, Sunday morning in the United States, there are less than 18% of the people that will have anything to do with a religious service on Sunday. Really? And yet God says the invitation is open to all people. And yet we drive people away in droves sometimes. And it continues. But when the king came in to see the guest, he noticed a man who was not wearing a wedding robe. And he said to him, "Friend, how did you get in here without a wedding robe?" And he was speechless. Now again, you got to kind of look at this in context and see how it applies to our world, our lives today. Back then, the tradition was that you had to wear a particular type of wedding garment. It was a wedding robe, really, is what it was. And for people that did not have one, normally it was provided. So that when you came to where the wedding feast was, if you didn't have the appropriate attire, they had a wedding robe for you to put on. And it was a way of honoring your guests. It was a way of honoring the couple that was being married. In this particular story, this parable, God is talking about, the honoring of God. And he says the man was speechless. The guy didn't know what to say. Yeah, I'm here. I'm sitting down at the table and I'm eating all the food and I'm having a good old time, and I'm not worried about you. I'm not worried about whether I honor you or not. I'm not worried about whether or not I'm dressed appropriately or I'm even prepared. I'm going to sit here and take advantage of this buffet that you've laid out before me. Thank you very much. See, it's talking about the guy's attitude. It's talking about the guy's, feelings toward his host. Then the king said to the attendants, "Bind him hand and foot and throw him into the outer darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. For many are called, but few are chosen." Now, I don't know about you, but that seems pretty harsh to me. I was just in there eating some of your food. You guys did invite me. Yeah, I might not be appropriately dressed, or I might not be honoring you, but really? You see, it's a metaphor that shows again that at some point, when God is ready to enter and usher everybody into the wedding feast or into the kingdom of heaven, the new kingdom of heaven, for all of eternity, it'll be the end. There won't be any second, third, fourth, fifth chances. Everybody will have made their choices by then. And what will be, will be. Somehow, we end up with this idea that there's always going to be more and more chances. It's not true. I would be lying to tell you, as your pastor, that you can just skip by on this journey of religion, if you will, this journey of Christianity until the last second, and then even then, if you haven't really come to a relationship with God, it's okay because he's not that mean and he'll let you, come into the banquet. That's not it at all. That's not what he's saying. Now, I didn't write these words, guys. You don't mind if I sit, do you? I didn't write these words. He did. So don't kill the messenger. There's a lot of reasons why people don't go to the banquet, why people don't go and check out the Christian faith. Like I said, we as a church, and it's not just the United Methodist Church, all of the denominations are in the same boat. Let's just be real about it. Part of it is this post-millennial or postmodern culture that we live in. And postmodernism says it's all about me, and I don't believe anybody. Prove it to me. I have my own will. I have my own ideas. So it's my life. You see, that's the culture that we're growing up into. That's the culture that has been developing along. That's one of the reasons why we have so many people falling out of any kind of religious contact in droves. Because they don't trust us. I read an interesting statistic the other day, and I'm ashamed of this statistic. And I'm going to do some more research on it. But the statistic said that in the United Methodist Church, 60% of the pastors do not trust in their bishops, which is the leadership. And I read that and I'm like, whoa, that's scary. But I can see some of the realities of it. I can see some of the truth. But again, there was all about choices. And we make the choice to go to God's banquet. We make the choice to come to Him and to offer ourselves to Him, for Him to work on, for Him to change, for Him to help us to become more like His Son, Jesus. There's a lot of people in the world today that say, I don't think I need to go to church in order to have a relationship with God. And that's absolutely true. You don't have to. The purpose of the church is to build each other up, to be there for each other as Christians, and to help one another through good times as well as bad times, to help each other stay faithful to the faith, and to, again, help each other and build each other up and so forth, as well as being a witness to the world. You don't go to church just so that you get the invitation. The invitation's already there. Even people that have never set foot in a door are invited to the wedding feast. They're invited to a relationship with God. Sometimes people say, you know, I don't really care about God. I don't care about the sun. I don't care about the banquet. I don't care about anything other than where I'm at today in my life. Well, to me, that's a sad place to be. Because what does it say about tomorrow? What does it say about my goals and priorities, my aspirations? What does it say about, you know, that last day? But it's nice in this parable we learn that God never gives up, does he? He really doesn't. Several times he sends his slaves out. And he offers himself, and he offers the relationship, he offers the banquet more times than what they really should be offered. But as it says, there does come a time where enough is enough. I mean, everything in Scripture points to the end. All the stories talk about, you know, and point toward, you know, that one time when all of a sudden Jesus is going to come back in the clouds or whatever, and the kingdom of heaven will be reestablished. Everything is pointing toward that moment. So we know that there will be an end. But all of God's graciousness along the pathway leads us sometimes to the point to where, yeah, I can procrastinate. I can wait. I don't need to be serious about it today. I don't really need to pay attention. You and I don't have any clue when our last day will be. We have no clue. I have no idea. Will I be here tomorrow? Lori, I don't know if I'll be in church or work tomorrow or not, because tonight might be the night. I don't have any clue. And that's the reality of it. But it's nice to know that God extends this invitation to a relationship with himself to everybody. To everybody. Sometimes in this world we live in, we get this idea of entitlement. Anybody with me on this one? We get this idea that I'm entitled to the kingdom of heaven, or I'm entitled to certain aspects of life. I'm entitled to certain benefits from where I live and blah, blah, blah. I mean, all these things, I'm entitled to certain things. I think the better way to look at it is there are many, many blessings in my life that I can take advantage of, that God takes joy in watching me take advantage of. But he wants the joy in my heart to be primarily from the relationship that I have with him. Now, I realize how difficult it is to have a relationship with a God that you don't see. You and I can have a relationship. We see each other. We can talk to each other. We can go out to dinner with each other. We can hang out. We can sit around and talk. We can come to know each other face to face. It's difficult with God. It's very difficult because we don't see him. We don't hear him. We have to be openly sensitive to what God is doing in and around us, to see his presence, to hear his voice. We have to look at things and realize that this is God at work. It's not just happenstance, or it's not just chance. God's relationship that he's offering to all people. And again, I say this from the bottom of my heart, to all people, regardless of where they're at. Regardless. You can be the worst person, the worst criminal in the world, And if today is a day when you repent of the things that you've done in your life, you're sorry about them, and if you would change them if you had the opportunity, and if today's the day when you choose to believe in Jesus and his sacrifice, man, you've got new life. You've got something awesome. You've got reason to celebrate. Because your life has been renewed. Your life has been changed. You just have to accept it. And that's all that the slaves were asking these people to do. As you've been invited to the banquet, everything is prepared. All the expense that the king has gone through to bless you, and he just wants you to trust in him and to honor him with your life. That's all. Put on the wedding garment. You know, approach the king for who he is. Approach God for who he is. That's all. But man, postmodernism says you don't really need to do that. And I'm not trying to harp on postmodernism. This has been a problem for centuries. We don't want to give up our control, so to speak. Our human nature is what it boils down to. You got to give up your human nature. You got to give up human nature. Not that all human nature is bad. It's not. But there's certain aspects of human nature that say, I want to keep the reins. That, as they say, that dog won't hunt. Anybody ever heard that expression? No. It doesn't work. Then the king said to the attendants, bind him hand and foot and throw him out into the outer darkness where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Man, that's harsh. For many are called, but few are chosen. What's he saying there? You see, don't misunderstand. What he's saying is everybody is called. Everybody has the opportunity to come to him. But the only ones that are chosen, to stay, are the ones that accept God for who he is. And that really is the bottom line. If he is God, then he's far superior to who I am. If he is God, then he must have a better way of doing things than I can ever imagine. If he is God, I should really trust him, shouldn't I? Because I can look at my own experiences, my own choices, and look back on a lifetime of making mistakes. So really, if he's God and he's perfect, I should trust him. I mean, it all makes perfect sense, doesn't it? But for some reason, I don't want to. I don't want to trust him. I want to trust me. So only those that have been basically chosen, or those that have accepted God, will be with him forever and ever and ever. That man that was thrown out was simply taking advantage of God and the blessings and the things that he could take advantage of. That's all. And many times we do that. We take advantage of the banquet that God is putting together for us. You know, Jesus spoke in parables because he wanted the religious leaders and the people of the day, as well as us today, I think, to understand how to apply these themes and these situations to our daily lives. And in our culture today, it makes sense that when you go to a wedding, you're there partially to honor the couple. You're also there to honor the families, too. And Jesus uses this example to demonstrate what God will tolerate, what God is honored by, and what he's not. Jesus said, pick up your cross and follow me. Everybody heard that one? Now, what in the heck is he talking about? So we all need to come up here and grab a hold of this bad boy and haul it down Rosebush Road? Is that it? Well, you're saying, yeah, go ahead. We'll watch you. But he's talking about the condition of hearts. It's all about the condition of hearts. So he says, pick up your cross. He says, pick up and deal with whatever comes your way. But do it honorably. Do it in faith and hope and trust. Do it in a way that honors the Father. Because not even a bird falls to the ground that he doesn't know about. What else did he say that was kind of unnerving? Deny yourself. He said that before the cross deal. What was he talking about? Human nature. Deny your own human nature when it is in opposition to God. Most people will not do that in order to enjoy the wedding feast. Why? Because it's so important to us. Who I am is so important to me. How else will I become fulfilled in life? How else will I be blessed in life other than the fulfillment of my own nature? Well, God says there is another way. He says, your nature is fallen, and if you can understand that and accept that, let me change you. Trust me that much. Trust me that much. Don't let your attitudes get into the way. Talk about attitudes. Notice how carefully I'm doing this, Darce? Talk about attitudes. What was the attitude of Christ when he went to the cross? And what does the Bible tell us to do before we come to the altar to lay down our gifts? They're not just talking about money, he's talking about your heart. Not talking about, before you come in and you throw down some money as an offering. No, he's talking about when you come before the Lord and you offer yourself in all humility. He says, rend your heart. He's talking about cleansing your heart of that which is wrong, that which is ill. Some of you have a real problem with another individual. There's somebody in your life that bugs the crap out of you, and you just don't like them. And I could never pray for that person. Oh my gosh, what they've done to me. But God says, before you come and you join me in a sacrifice of my son's life, let it go. Let it go. Whatever it is that is holding you back from a complete relationship with me, one that's not walled up because of bitterness or envy. He says, before you come and commune with me, how in the world do you ever expect to get to the point to where you will put on the wedding robe and join me at the feast if you hold on to the resentments and the bitternesses and the anxieties that you have in this life? And we all have them. There's not a single person in here that doesn't. And in this story, he's reminding us that we need to let that go. For many are invited, but few are chosen. And again, it's not, well, I'm going to pick David here because he's a cool guy and the rest of you are screwed. No. He says, I'm going to pick David here because David has chosen in his heart to empty himself so that I can be with him in fullness, so my spirit can dwell inside of who he is. You see, that's the idea. So as you come today to the communion table, if there's something or somebody that's bugging you, that's just a sore spot for you, leave it at the cross. You don't have to deal with it. You don't have to deal with it. If there are people in your life that you know that you couldn't pray for this person if your life depended on it, today's the day you need to depend on it. Today's the day you need to leave it at the cross. You see, Christians are growing people. Christians are people that love God enough to let God work inside of their hearts. The night he was betrayed, of course, he took bread and he broke it and he said, "This is my body, which is broken for you." Don't ever take those words lightly. Jesus said, "My body will be broken for you." Think about what that means. And he took the cup and he said, "This is the cup of my blood, again, which is spilled to the ground for you." Don't ever take it lightly. Let go of the hardships. Let go of the bitterness. Let go of the situations.